I really should call this the gun that I most regret selling, but that's actually not this gun. That's a whole other story that we won't get into too much in this video. But we are going to talk about the Colt Python. We're going to shoot it and get into a little bit of the history of the gun and why I really like the Colt Python. Stick around. I want to welcome you to Riders Range. Thanks for joining us to talk about the Python. To me, the most iconic double action revolver that, at least certainly during my time. The Python was made between 1955 and really 2005, although after 1999 the I-frame Python was a custom shop only, and after 2005 Colt stopped making them. It got costly to make them. The world was switching to semi-automatic pistols, and Colt just figured they weren't going to make enough Pythons at an affordable price, so they did stop production. In 2020 they resurrected production, although I understand the internals are a little bit different, and frankly I don't right now have a desire to own a modern Python. Just something about the old Pythons just really like, and I've got a real warm spot in my heart for the one that I unfortunately sold. I've got one picture of that gun. I'll work it in here somewhere. Sadly, it's gone. I searched long and hard for a replacement. Unfortunately, I bid $2,500 on one with Elias and sights, lost it. I did manage to pick this one up for substantially cheaper, but no original box like mine had, no original grips like mine had. Mine still had the hammer spur, the original trigger face on it, original owner's manual. This one didn't have any of that, and I paid almost twice as much for this as I got out of the other one when I sold it. But I really shouldn't be getting into that. That's a totally different video. The guns that I most regret selling. Anyway, Colt Python, I-frame, 6-inch barrel, blue finish, and that's what I really like about the Python. Nothing to me beats the royal blue finish. Now this gun actually it's got some use on it, but the finish is actually still pretty good, probably 95% or better. And certainly mine was also. I had a little bit of holster wear around the muzzle on mine, like this one does, because I did use it in distinguished competition during my PPC matches. And the Python is the gun that I used to actually earn my distinguished badge, and in 1984, I believe it was, down in Plainfield, Indiana, I actually won the distinguished match at their regional with my Python. I mentioned Elias and sights. They were an option, and you just don't find too many of them, but the Elias and sight is a competition type sight, very similar to the Bomar I had, at least in looks, not in function. But smoke these things with a smoker, so they're soot black, and really good target definition when we had to shoot these things all the way out to 50 yards. But unlike the Bomar and my PPC guns, these don't have any simple adjustment. You can adjust them for windage and elevation. And I actually had a cheat sheet in my gun box to tell me how many clicks up, how many clicks back down to go between the 25-yard stage and the 50-yard stage for a different hold. But this gun is wonderfully accurate, using 158 grain round nose lead ammunition, and that's what we used in the distinguished matches. All basic stuff has still got a little bit of it left, not a lot, but this gun is wonderfully accurate with that ammunition. It did mention rounded trigger face on this one. Again, that's been polished off, and this would never work in distinguished competition. Wood grips that are okay, but they're certainly not original. But the trigger on a Python, now original Pythons had some stacking to them. I never cared for that action. This one has been reworked, as was mine. So it's a smooth, even pull, and yeah, they're empty. This one right now is coming in just over 8 pounds. A little heavier than my other one was, but when I got this, it was about a 5.5 pound trigger pull, but it didn't reliably ignite all the primers. A lot of that's due to the lack of mass on the hammer. So in order to make up for the lack of mass, I actually had to shim the mainspring a little bit, which gave me a heavier pull. Now this can be fired single action. Obviously you have to start it with the trigger, pull the hammer back, but the Colt, unlike Smith's, when you release the trigger, or when the trigger actually breaks, there is zero over travel. Smith, so you get a little bit of over travel. And the single action on this is right at 5 pounds, and again, that's because of that shimmed spring. But it does shoot nice, and you'll see that even though it's shooting just a little bit high, and I hadn't shot this gun in quite a while, so I haven't sighted it in for PPC, but the lateral dispersion on the groups was pretty good. The vertical was not quite so good. That's me, not the gun. Again, I haven't shot PPC in 25 years, so I'm certainly not going to blame that on the gun. Smith & Wesson fans will notice this gun is backwards. Instead of pushing on the cylinder release, you pull it. And when the cylinder rotates, you go backward from a Smith. Smith rotates anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever you prefer, whereas a Colt rotates clockwise. Other distinguishing things about the Colt, in addition to the Lias sights on this one, the ribbed barrel has been a hallmark of the Colt Python since 1955, as well as a full underlug. Now, initially the full underlug was hollow, but at some point they changed it to a solid full underlug, which actually gave it a fair amount of weight. And loaded with 6 rounds of 158 grain lead ammunition, this gun comes in at 49.9 ounces, so it certainly is not a lightweight, which also does help for the stability, though, particularly when shooting double action at 50 yards. When you got to keep as much as you can within that 4x6 10 ring. So, good, nice shooting gun, very nicely finished. As I understand it, starting in the 1970s, the factory used laser bore sighting on these, which I don't think any other manufacturer was doing at the time. That helped align the sights and make these very accurate right out of the box. And in fact, these were good enough to be used by the Colorado and Georgia State Patrols, the Florida Highway Patrol, until those agencies switched to semi-automatics. They were issued generally 4-inch revolvers back then. But one complaint about the Python is because the action is so precise on these that they did have a tendency to go out of time after a while. Now, I shot, I couldn't tell you how many thousands of rounds through my Python and never had a timing issue. This one still, and this one does have some use, this one still locks up just as tight as can be with no complaints at all. And today's Pythons are just, the prices are still out of sight. I did see one on an auction site that was listed for $999.99. I'll roll a quick picture into that, and it is just, it's been refinished, but it was never polished out, and it's just terribly rusty. Again, $1,000 for a rusty Python. I saw one for $1,500 that had some rust on it, and I did see one go as high as $16,000 for pristine number 57. $6,500 for mint condition with box and grips and everything original on it. But generally, you can expect to pay $2,500 as a bare minimum. In fact, if you can find one for $2,500, go for it if you really like the Python. But it's not unusual to see these things going regularly for $3,000 now. So that's my Python. Shoots good at 12 yards to run the plates, and it shoots good at 25 yards, and it shoots good at 50 yards. It hits everything I aim at 50 yards, 10-inch plates, no problem. I may have to take this out this spring, set up a PPC course, and just see if after 25 years of not shooting PPC that I still may be able to do it with this Colt Python. So that's just a quick look at my Python, but it's not my Python, not my original one, but it's still a nice gun. If you like this video, we do appreciate a thumbs up. We certainly appreciate it if you share this video. If you have any social media that you can post it on to get the word out, by all means, we appreciate that. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, click on the notifications bell so you know what's coming up on Riders Range. Comments on this video down below are highly appreciated. Comments on anything else to info@ridersrange.com. And again, just a quick look at a classic Python from the dark corners of the safe out here at Riders Range. I want to thank you for stopping by.